In the poem After My Death, Nahum Bialik, one of Jewry's greatest writers, wrote, "Great is the pain. There was a man, and look, he is no more. The song of life was broken. Still he had one more melody. Now it is lost forever." Indeed, the song of life was broken, while he still had one more melody. Today, the pain is palpable as we assemble to say goodbye to a partner and soulmate, a father, a relative and friend, a congregational and community leader, a dedicated student of Torah. Eric is survived by his partner and beloved soulmate, Michelle, their children, Rebecca and Morgan, as well as by sister-in-law, Siying, cousins Karen, Stephen, and Robert and their families. Joining with members of his family in this sanctuary, we acknowledged unfinished dreams and dear ones and a community left diminished. We also affirm the comfort of presence. In the depths of grief and despair, O God, keep all strong, so that we may help the stricken to regain strength. Help us to support them as they ask the inevitable questions. We grieve for what might have been, for joys unrealized, for tasks undone, for hopes thwarted. Help us to bring comfort to the bereaved. Help us to raise them from the depths of sorrow, slowly, lovingly. Help us to lead them from the night of desolation to the dawn of another day. Holy One, instruct us in the ways of living and help us all to find meaning in the mystery of eternal life. For we know all things pass, all that lives must die. All that we prize is but lent to us, and the time comes when we must surrender it. We are travelers on the same road that leads to the same end. Acutely aware of life's ultimate brevity, especially at the age of 62. Today, we who likewise travel that well-worn road summon the hope of faith in a world to come. We also avow that for Eric's love and devotion that united his family and friends in life, and which death cannot sever, for his companionship that was shared along life's path and which continues through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of his heart and mind that brought joy and happiness and is now a remembrance, for devotion to others and saving everything, for emceeing Southbury's Volunteer Appreciation Day and overseeing the memorials and dedications in this very sanctuary. For all this and more, there should be gratitude. Hence, amidst pain and mystery, we lift our voices in prayer and remembrance, in song and tribute. Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid, says the psalmist, I have set the eternal always before me.
Sheviti Adonai lenegdi tamid, ki mimini bolemot. Lachen samach libi vayageh kivodi, afesari yishkon lavetak. Ki lo tazov nafshi lishol, lo titen chasid kalerot shachat, todieni urachayim, urachayim. Sova samachot al pnecha, nimot bimin hanetzach. Shiviti Adonai Lineti Tamid Himimini Olemot.
And the child asked, "Tell me of life." And the sage answered, "Life, my child, is a mystery. We do not ask to be born, nor do we even understand the meaning of birth, of creation. We grow and we experience life's pleasures and pains. We love, and slowly, oh so slowly, we come to realize that we have become that we are. At that moment, we humble ourselves before the mystery of life and quietly say, 'Though I knew not, I have been granted the most precious gift of all, the gift of life.' And the child asked, 'Tell me of death.' And the sage answered, 'Death, my child, is a mystery. It is the inevitable return of the gift of life, the gift which came free to us. We live as the trustee of that mysterious being, of that unexplainable becoming. Yes, you and I are but the trustees of life. We nurture it, we delight in it, we give of it to others. And at the appointed time, we sadly, yet with pride, return it from whence it came. The beauty, my child, is that what we are, what we have become, remains long after the gift has been returned. It remains as a precious keepsake for our loved ones who live on. There are stars."
There are stars up above, so very far away, and we only see their twinkling lights long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with the people we loved, the persons who shared our lives. Their memories shine ever brightly, though their time with us is done. And the stars up above that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us and help us find our way. These are the lights that guide us and help us find our way. So as we live, we honor their lives. So as we live, we remember. So as we live, we honor their lives. So as we live, we remember. So as we live, we honor their lives. And we remember. They are the lights that guide us and help us find our way.
Psalm 15. Adonai, who may abide in your house? Who may dwell in your holy mountain? Those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless but honor those who revere God, who give their word and come what may do not retract, who do not exploit others, who do not take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. In Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
Adonai Raoui lo exar Bino deshe yarbitzeni Amemenuchot Amemenuchot Noshi Yeshovev Yeshovev Yancheni b'magalet tzedek Yancheni b'magalet tzedek Riman Shemo God ki elek begeit salmavet lo irara ki imadi shivticha umishantecha Lefanai Shulchan Negesorai Dishon Tov Shemen Roshi Kosi Rivaya Tov v'chesed yidivuni koli mechayai v'shavti b'veit Adonai leorech yamin. Adonai Rohi lo exar Adonai Rohi lo
We read from the biblical writer Ecclesiastes. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. A time to speak, may the words of our mouth and the meditations of our heart be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer.
Imrefi v'hegion libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri tzuri v'goali Adonai
May the words of our mouth be acceptable to you. Words we are taught matter. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver, says the proverb. As social beings, words indeed do matter, and we will now hear words of remembrance of Eric. The book of Proverbs also tells us, Lashon Hachamim Marpeh, that the tongue of the wise brings balm, brings healing. May the words of our speakers bring their intended consolation. Our first speaker, Eric's cousin, Karen Belford.
Remembering Eric. We gathered this morning to reflect and celebrate my cousin Eric's life. Growing up, Eric and I were close in age, and our families enjoyed a very close relationship. Our families shared many outings together, especially many pleasurable weekends at the beach and on their boat. When Eric's family was going to get a dog, I went along with Eric and his brother to go pick out the puppy. Eric told me it was me that chose the puppy from the litter, and that was to become their dog, Love, their Labrador retriever. This really made me feel special, as I always wanted a dog, but our parents did not allow us to have a pet. As we grew up, we shared many of the Hall family's wonderful parties and family gatherings. Eric was a gracious host at his family home and was eager for everyone to have a good time. Eric was creative and found numerous ways to bring people together. Occasionally, when we celebrated Passover together, Eric would write a funny preview of the reading of the Haggadah from the, quote, Hall's Haggadah and Chicken Soup Company, end quote. Eric's scripted included all family members and guests into his own version of the Haggadah before we started actually reading from the Haggadah. You can imagine how long our seders were before the meal started. Eric's family always celebrated birthdays together. One very memorable experience was when his parents made a murder mystery dinner. We all got costumes and props to create our characters, and Eric loved every minute of it. Eric was the only person I know that loved to shop. He would come back home, and his mom would say, "What am I going to do with all this stuff?" However, when he came home and parked a big, red, full-size fire engine in their driveway that he purchased, you could see how that went over well with the neighbors. Eric had a good heart and went out of his way to help others. Eric was devoted to his parents, and he had a very special relationship with my brother David, who had a rare disability. Together, Eric and I took my brother David on a trip to Disney World in Florida, and we all shared a suite in a hotel. Disney was a place where the two of them could spend endless time. I was so glad to have Eric with me. On another occasion, Eric's parents invited me to travel to Europe with them on a family trip. My aunt and uncle felt I was married to my job and I should finally take a break. I was one person doing everything in my current job situation at the time, and it was a challenge to make that possible. They gave me their itinerary and told me that if I could manage to get to Europe, I could meet them in Paris. Since this was a time before the internet, cell phones, and faxes, there was really no way for me to let them know that I was on my way. They were surprised when they returned from the day's activities that the desk clerk at the hotel told them that their daughter had arrived and had checked into the room. They were all so surprised that I actually showed up, and we all had a great time. After I got married and had our daughter, Emma, we were blessed to have my Aunt Annette and Uncle Bernie to help watching Emma, since my husband and I had different work schedules. At times, I could not get home in time before my husband had to go to work. And on many occasions, my husband would drop our daughter at their home, and Eric was always around, and he loved to play and entertain Emma. She has fond memories of being together with Eric, who even helped her to learn how to ride a two-wheel bicycle. Eric loved to do carpentry work and could often be found working on woodworking projects in the basement together with my Uncle Bernie. When I moved to our new home and I told Eric that I purchased the dining room table from the previous owners, but it was not large enough to use for large gatherings, he said, "No problem, come over, and we can make extension leaves for the table," which we did together. He always had a can-do attitude and was willing to help. I know, Morgan, how he helped you with your play project at school, and he was so proud of that. Eric and his family loved to share and watch old family movies, and recently he told me that he was in the process of digitizing the originals to keep those fond, special memories. My final memory is sadly with Eric's passing, that a great void will always exist. I know that having Michelle, Rebecca, and Morgan in his life was one of his greatest joys.
Thank you. We invite forward Eric's cousin, Robert Hershkowitz.
My name is Robert Hershkowitz. Eric and me are related through our grandfathers who were brothers. The family originated in southwestern Ukraine, where eventually hunger drove them down across the river into Sighet in North Romania today. Then it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The closest city was Satmar, where you may have heard the name before. Sighet was a little town. Poverty was unbelievable. Life was very much like Tuvia, except less comic, of course. Children, one upon the other, living 10 in a room. Eventually, 2 brothers and 2 sisters made their way to America at the beginning of the 1900s. One of them was Eric's grandfather, Bernie's father. Life here was not exactly as imagined. Streets were not paved in gold. The struggles were enormous. One sister married, had 2 children, lost husband, married again, had another baby, lost another husband, was left with 3 little children. Our great-grandfather sent the great-grandmother, go and help our daughter out there. She came out here. Within 2 years, both mother and the grandmother, both were dead, 3 little orphans left around. Life was really, really difficult in those years. Some made their life in different professions. When the time came for Bernie to go on to school, they decided that the name Hershkowitz may be a little bit too complicated, too Jewish. Hall would do better, and that's how the Halls came into being. We met actually in 1976 when we arrived here from Israel, and we were hosted by Annette and Bernie, and we met the boys. Eric was, I believe, about 17, 18 at the time, Peter a few years older. In the house in Long Island, in Kings Point, there were family gatherings, which to us as newcomers, they looked very unusual. They would make productions of a party where there would be grilling and treasure hunt, where Eric would really hide pieces of gold-like stuff into sand, and we have to go and dig it up. Nuggets and all sort of things. And then in the kitchen they would make cream soda. What is that? Who ever heard of that? All sort of things. They really made the effort. And Eric was always there to the last detail. It was not a child game. It was a serious thing, this. He had a camera and he filmed. At the time, we didn't have yet smartphones and selfies and all that stuff, but an 8mm and a Super 8 eventually. And he filmed left and right those gatherings, sometimes comically introducing the various cousins who, some of them could not talk to each other. My father would come, but he couldn't talk to his first cousins because he spoke Hebrew, Yiddish, German, Hungarian, Romanian. They only spoke English here because they grew up here. So going, translating from one another, filming them, introducing them comically, why this one and that one, being brothers, but they have different last names and different spellings and different that. It would make a whole thing out of it. It was nice. It was great. Eventually, those pictures and those films, he very carefully gathered them and preserved them. I mean, everybody has an album of pictures in the house. Not the way Eric cataloged and prepared everything. Not the way he took all those 8 and Super 8 films, spliced them, taped them together, converted them eventually into DVDs and CDs, and then added the dates. Looking at those things, I could see the life of these people who arrived and their children in America in the 50s and the 60s. For us, the latecomers, this looked like in the movies, like Mrs. Maisel or something like that. Life in the South Bronx was really something else. In one of my visits not long ago, he handed me a DVD, and in that DVD, I saw them, of course, young, and I saw there the cousins trying to talk to each other without having a common language, yet talking, hugging, kissing, and him going around and joking with everybody and really making a whole scene out of it. We haven't met as often as we should have, but I think last time or before that, we even had a political discussion, which these days is something that people don't have. They talk over each other, or they speak with animosity, with hatred, with things. He had this ability to sit, to explain, to listen, to argue, to discuss. I don't know, maybe from his father's lawyer side he inherited that, I don't know. And the liberal views from his mother's side, who took up every cause that there could be it this or that. That's a unique ability which today is very rare among people. Very rare in this atmosphere. I just wanted you to know a little bit about the father side of the family, because I know that the other side is more or less covered. In our tradition, when somebody passes away, we say, Baruch Dayan Hamed, blessing the Judge of Truth, and we go and say a Kaddish in which we immediately praise the Lord for giving us the time with this person, be it a friend, be it love, be it anything, which we stay with those memories and we cherish them. I will remember very, very fondly all the times that we had together, how they introduced us to this American life, how much love he showered upon us when we came up to the house a couple of times, last time with my sister when she was visiting from Israel. It were memories that will stay with us forever. Thank you.
Rebecca and Morgan.
I was saying I always stand on this side of the bima, but this feels different. All right. All right. Start on it? Yep. All right. On behalf of our family, we would like to thank you all for coming today and for all the support we have received over the last few days. Eric always said that we were a team. Whenever we were in trouble, we were both in trouble. And we decided to honor him by doing this together and by finding the strength together. As Karen said, those of you that knew Eric knew that no matter where he was, unless he was there, he would have much rather been in Disney World. So, and as those of you who have been to Disney know, when you get to the park, you are able to choose from a variety of buttons that express the various occasions that might bring you there. For our family, every time we embarked on our annual pilgrimage, we always came up with some reason to celebrate, no matter how big or small. As I was thinking yesterday, I thought about walking down Main Street and selecting a button to describe my visit. I realized that if I were in Disney, I would walk into Town Hall and grab the green button that reads "I'm celebrating" and write the word "life." I'm celebrating life. That is truly what Eric would want today to be about. While yes, these last few days and those to come are going to be more challenging than ever, they are also time to celebrate and reflect on the amazing life that Eric had. From the very day that Eric pulled up to our house to meet me and Morgan for the very first time, our lives were changed forever. From the day I met him, Eric never treated us as any less than his own. In thinking about today, Morgan expressed to me that when she thinks about a father, she thinks about someone who always shows up, someone who is always there no matter what. Eric was always there from us, from every concert to stepping up to coach Morgan's basketball team, though
we never won a game.
He didn't know much about basketball, but he was always there cheering us on. When we were sick, Eric would always stay home with us and make sure we were surrounded by all of our favorite things. And then the doorbell would ring around noon, and there would be the Chinese food delivery man there as he had ordered us lunch. And as I got older, I found that although I don't enjoy Chinese food as much as an adult, when I'm sick, it's the food that I always crave. While I would argue that Chinese food doesn't have any magical healing power, the love and care that Eric put into those days sure made it feel like it did. Over several parts of my life, I struggled deeply with the word stepfather. There seemed to be the societal connotation that because this person came into your life at a later point, somehow they were less significant. Eric, I need you to know that you aren't like a father to me. You are a father to me in every way. You were there through every milestone and every hardship that Mom, Morgan, and I faced. Your love and devotion to us was unwavering. You always taught me that family comes before everything, and I promise to live my life remembering that.
Eric was a man of many talents. There were never a few weeks that went by without us learning something completely new and totally random about him. After finding out that he owned a fire truck and had his pilot's license, I thought nothing else would surprise me, but I was wrong every time. I remember one day when Eric came into my high school to help us build a set for the Addams family, and one of my friends asked me what else Eric did, and I replied that it would be easier to say what Eric didn't do. Eric was passionate about education and bettering himself. If there was something that needed to be done and he didn't know how to do it, he would sit on the couch for hours watching shows like This Old House, the most boring show, and
That's not really in there.
and read every article he could find until he found a solution. He passed this knowledge on to me and tried to teach me everything he knew. Eric's spirit can be found in the following quote: "Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime." That's how he was as a parent. Eric would help us through anything, his only rule being that we stood beside him watching and learning, so the next time we could do it ourselves. Although this plan inevitably failed when he would have to show us how to do it again. Eric's strongest Jewish value was keeping the practice of tikkun olam, repairing the world. While Eric donated to many charities, he always believed that donating your time was so much more than that. Eric volunteered for the American Red Cross since he was a teenager, and since we were younger than that, Eric was taking us to instructor trainer classes and countless other events that supported our community. It was at these events, I believe, Rebecca got her first real experience in teaching. While his community was important to him, so were we. There were weeks when it felt like Eric being there for us was his full-time job. Throughout our entire lives, Eric was there to help. For me, Eric gave his time helping my high school building sets for productions that we worked on. It always started out as a minor question. I would ask him, is this okay? Is this structurally sound? But
No.
it usually wasn't. But by the end of the week, he would have committed himself to the project that was important to me and now equally as important to him. This was one of my favorite ways to spend time with Eric. He would spend a couple hours a day with me and my friends at the school, helping and teaching other students along the way.
We're good.
Maybe what we admire most about Eric was his devotion to our mom. Our friends often described our parents as an unstoppable team, and we couldn't agree more. They were devoted to each other and to making this world a better place, standing side by side. I can never truly express how grateful I am to Eric for taking care of my mom. He was an incredible, supportive spouse. While he may have taken every chance he could to tease her about her overcommitment, he was incredibly proud of her and all the work that she was doing to make our community a better place. We always overheard him telling anyone that would listen about a new thing that she was doing that week, and the pride in his voice. At home, not a day went by when we didn't see the love the two shared. It was the subtle things for him that always showed he cared. Eric would always stay up, waiting to greet her when she came home from one of her really, really long meetings. And he would always celebrate the little things with her, no matter how small. Lots of victory dinners at Barbary's, and the most random gifts that sometimes were for him. He always wanted her to know how much he cared.
When I was younger, I used to start every birthday card or every card just the same way, writing, thank you for all you do for me. And as I got older, I stopped doing that because Eric used to mock me a little bit about it. But right now, I find myself struggling to find any other words to describe what we want to say. So thank you for everything. We love you so much.
Rudy Zeidler.
Eric was a real mensch. He knew what friendship meant, and he was one of my best friends. He will be genuinely missed by his loving family, by me, and by our congregation. With its Yiddish origin of human being, the meaning of mensch is something more. A mensch is a person of integrity and honor, the type of person you can count on, and that was Eric. Starting with family, Eric did just that. Every day, Eric publicly declared his love for his beloveds, Michelle, Rebecca, and Morgan, I cannot recall a single conversation, and we had many, that did not include his quelling about their wonderfulness and achievements. Eric not only had integrity and honor, he was a fantastic human being. He was a leader, a doer, and very dedicated to B'nai Israel. For all these reasons and more, I held him in great respect and affection and enjoyed our times together. Our time sometimes included rambling discussions, where sometimes we agreed and sometimes not. But it wasn't idle talk. If Eric said that he would do something, then he did it, regardless of hours, regardless of effort, energy, the time or day of night, and always with a positive, smiling attitude. He could get it done. And no matter how busy he was, no matter how urgent the other subject, when he called, he would always lead with, "How are you?" A genuine concern. There are very few people who I know to be real friends and true menschs. Eric was both. Along with his beloveds, the Jewish community, I have suffered a genuine loss. We'll all miss him. Eric will miss you, and are much better for having known you.
We invite forward State Representative Arthur O'Neill.
Eric Hall was a friend of mine. Naturally, we would talk about politics. Eric was a lifelong Democrat, member of the Southbury Zoning Board of Appeals. He'd been politically active all of his life. I, of course, am a lifelong Republican. We would talk about current national, state, and local politics, but we would also talk about the way things used to be. He told me about his father, a Democrat, a lawyer in New York, who had a law partner, a Republican, who for many years was an elected judge in the state of New York. The two got along perfectly because, as Eric said, that was a time when politics was about friendship and bringing people together, not anger and pulling people apart. We had great conversations. And we would talk about other things besides politics. Once I mentioned that I was having a problem with unseasoned firewood burning in the fireplace. Eric said that he was able to get firewood like that, greenish firewood, to burn because he would split it into small pieces. And I said I had tried that, but the 7-pound maul was wreaking havoc on my back. And he immediately offered me the use of his electric log splitter. I said, "Thank you, I'll give you a call, we'll make arrangements to pick it up." Early the next morning, Morgan and Eric were in my driveway, waking me up, with a 100-pound log splitter, and showed me how to use it and put it to use, and it was so effective that I was able to burn an entire cord of virtually green wood satisfactorily. But eventually Eric needed to get his log splitter back because he had to split his own wood for the following season. Sometime later, walked into the garage on my birthday, and there was a 100-pound log splitter with a red bow on it sitting there that Eric had helped my wife Ruby pick out and order. On Valentine's Day, just passed, Michelle called Ruby and suggested we all go out to dinner. And then Eric called Ruby and said, "Please don't forget to bring the faucet handle for your shower." because they'd been having an ongoing discussion about her trying to fix that faucet handle. And he said, make sure you bring it because I want to take a look at it. I think I can help you. By the time we got to their home for dessert after we left the restaurant, Eric had dismantled the faucet handle and was explaining to us how to fix it. Those were his last words. Suddenly, he stopped in mid-sentence. Up to his final moments, he was doing what he always did, a good deed. Eric Hall was a friend of mine. I will miss him. Farewell, my friend.
In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai Natan, Adonai Lekach, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. In ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are not strangers to us. Yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave and that there is strength in faith. With Job, we say, Adonai Natan, God, you have given, you gave us a loved one who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in his life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai Lekach, God, you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust, before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love as we now say, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevarach, blessed be the name of God, now and forever. We take this moment to pray in silence.
B'tach libi b'toratecha, b'tach libi b'toratecha, u'v'mitzvotecha, u'v'mitzvotecha. Tirdov, nafshi. Aseh leman shemecha. Aseh leman yeminecha. Kedushatecha, aseh leman Toratecha, yiyu leratzon, imrefi v'hegyon, libi lefanecha, libi lefanecha, למען שמך, עשה למען ימינך, עשה למען קדושתך, עשה למען תורתך.
Daily prayer translation, our hearts to your Torah. As his last words, the German journalist Kurt Tucholsky, as his last words he was said to have wryly observed, "I am proud of being Jewish. If I wasn't proud, I'd still be Jewish. So I'd rather be proud." Yet as we consider his epitaph, Eric Hall's life and commitments offered a marked contrast. For with Eric, there was no calculation, no reservation, no equivocation. Together in partnership with Michelle, he embodied the Talmudic understanding, Yehudi, Yehudi. If you be a Jew, be true to that, be just that. Eric celebrated his Jewish identity, nurturing it as part of the core of his very essence. Whether, as we've heard, Eric was writing unique Passover Haggadot scripts for family gatherings, reading in the Hungarian of his family a Jewish prayer at a special service, affixing memorial plaques into the boards on the back of this sanctuary, raising the Torah here during worship services, opening his heart to Torah as he brought an English edition of Mikrot Gedolot, of the classical rabbinical commentaries, to further sharpen Torah study. Proudly fostering and honoring Rebecca and Morgan's own Jewish connections. Or conversely, whether by showing his deep mastery of local history amidst no small amount of Borscht Belt shtick and schmaltz, while emceeing the town of Southbury's Volunteer Appreciation Day, Eric loved being Jewish. Yehudi, Yehudi. He was true to himself and our people Israel. Eric was born in December 1957 to Annette and Bernard. A brother, Peter, was 2 years his senior. Eric enjoyed a happy childhood and would remain extremely close, as we've heard, that he was devoted to his parents and to his relatives. Indeed, Eric would later move back home to help care for Annette amidst her battle with cancer. When Eric was a teenager, the family opted to move from New Hyde Park to Great Neck, so as to be part of a larger Jewish community. For many years, Eric would be a member of Temple Isaiah there. Musical, Eric played the bass. He was also part of the AV club. Still, there were challenges. Enrolled because of scheduling into the school chorus, the teacher asked him to mouth the words instead. which induced Eric to sing louder. But fast forward decades, Rebecca, not Eric, became a soloist here. A Long Islander, Eric studied criminal justice at C.W. Post. He was the head judge on the student government's judiciary. Falling one credit short of graduation, Eric remained steadfast. He awaited Morgan's commencement before he would at last complete the paperwork and pay the fee for his own degree. For already Eric had become an entrepreneur. He worked with projects with his father, as we've heard, his father an attorney. He also owned a locksmith shop in Plainview. Other businesses followed, and Eric specialized in travel. Later, he founded Myrick with Michelle, a travel and consulting agency predominantly supporting Native American tribes in North Dakota and South Dakota, as indeed Eric was deeply committed to promoting social equity for all. Eric and Michelle had met in October of 2005. We might have guessed they were introduced by an algorithm on JDate. Having conversed several weeks, when they finally met, he announced, "I'm just like the prince from The Little Mermaid." It was an apt description. That character, too, was named Eric. And Eric remained entranced, as we know, by all things Disney. Extensive memorabilia decorated the house, and even more was stored in boxes. Case in point, Eric was disappointed when I scowled at his wearing Disney Oswald ears as a yarmulke regularly to services here. Truly, though, he was Michelle's prince. From that moment on, Eric was profoundly devoted to her. He proved his attributes immediately. The first days of their romance occurred as each cared for ailing mothers. Yet this only served to quickly strengthen their bond. Eric would help out with Michelle's mother in the hospital, and Michelle, to satisfy a craving Annette had, delivered fettuccine Alfredo to Great Neck. While still young, Rebecca and Morgan likewise soon knew to count on Eric's extraordinary devotion. For example, after he and Michelle had scouted out Minnesota and California, a second trip was arranged that included the girls, highlighted by Wolfgang Puck himself preparing them pasta. Eric earned their respect and won their love. As we know, though he knew little about basketball, he stepped in to coach a team. Eric later changed his schedule to volunteer for an ADL program held at Pomperaug, and far more personally taxing, consented to wear a t-shirt. Ever handy and a dedicated craftsman, he might build with Morgan a robot costume out of spray paint and recycled cardboard, or for a college course, help fashion a guillotine from a recycled wood pallet. For years, Eric used stuffed animals from the Pavlov series to assist in communicating with Rebecca and Morgan. Michelle is holding it now. Becoming their father, he was thrilled with their many great accomplishments within and beyond the synagogue as he nurtured their growth into adulthood. We know Eric was a shopper. Everything from a yellow Mustang, now in the garage, to that real red fire truck, which I'm told is still somewhere in upstate New York, and much, much more. He collected Hess toy trucks and saved almost everything imaginable. After they had moved here to Connecticut and became pillars of our own community, Eric once gave me a file of clippings about Soviet Jewry from the early 1970s. Who keeps such stuff? Eric supported museums and was a founding member of the new American Jewish Museum in Philadelphia. He was generous, thinking through his gifts for others. For example, just days ago, for Valentine's Day, a number of purses with feet had just arrived at the house for Michelle. I've gotten wonderful bottles of strong drink. Eric made so many friends, especially here within our congregation and its orbit. He had a sense of humor and appreciated history and irony. He read and saved books by James Patterson and Clive Cussler. He read the New York Times, followed the news closely, and did 3D puzzles. He loved to barbecue and enjoy a good steak. He loved good restaurants, including the Black Angus in Danbury, to which he and Michelle introduced others. He was kind and open and giving, including to those with special needs. For 4 decades, Eric was involved with the Red Cross, rising to become Metro New York Chairman of Preparedness, Health, and Safety Services. Eric also led training programs at our synagogue, including to the confirmation class. A regular minyaner at services, at Torah study, Eric raised insightful questions and shared a perspective guided by a deep compassion for the predicament faced by his forebears. Eric especially distinguished himself as the chair of our Memorials and Dedications Committee. He organized special plaque dedication ceremonies and oversaw our successful Yisker book and its fundraising. The meetings of his committee featured pizza and salad and had great attendance. It served a larger purpose. Eric was determined to promote remembrance, honoring those who have come before us, who had paved our way. A famous Jewish teaching instructs, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? But if I am only for myself, what am I? The lesson, while rooted in our own community, we must dedicate ourselves beyond it. For his part, Eric's volunteerism, which extended to other committees here, such as his tenure as House Chair for the building, likewise reached out to the town of Southbury. He was the Vice Chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals and a leading member of the Volunteer Appreciation Committee. A proud Democrat, he had been Secretary of the Town Committee. As anyone who worked with him knows, in all that he did, Eric was genuinely concerned for others, indefatigable, and determinedly stubborn. Of course, it's impossible to speak of Eric without also mentioning Michelle. Their tasks and devotions, their activities and commitments invariably intersected. A lifelong Reform Jew himself, Eric was thrilled by Michelle's recent election onto the National Board of the Women of Reform Judaism. Each of her many other efforts and successes, such as the new community chorus, likewise engendered immense pride. To Michelle, the true love of his life, along with Rebecca and Morgan, you who, as with Eric, bring a Jewish lens to all that you do, as well as to Eric's family and friends, and to all who mourn his passing, we say, nothing so ennobles us as the will to love, to share, to nurture connection, and to maintain our obligations. Eric and you have done all that. A true son of Israel, Eric grasped that our identities are forged through positive encounter with community, learning, remembrance, and one another. He breathed the understanding, Yehudi, Yehudi. If you are a Jew, be true to that. Hence, at this sad hour, amidst the shock of his passing, we pray, Oseh Shalom Bimramav. May the one who makes peace in the high heavens help to guide Eric's dear ones towards a peace of mind, a hope and blessing at the heart of Jewish faith. May Eric's soul, a quintessentially Jewish soul, may Shlomo Melech ben Beryl Dov Vasara rest peacefully, now return to the source of life. Ken Yehi Ratzon, be this God's will.
Shalom b'bramav, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Amen. Oseh shalom, shalom b'bramav, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Ve'al kol Yisrael, amen.
Due to unforeseen and uncontrollable circumstances, the burial service will be held tomorrow at 1 p.m. at Beth Israel Cedar Park Cemetery in Paramus, New Jersey. Immediately following that service, Shiva Minyan will be held at the family home at 160 Lake Ridge Road in Southbury, both tomorrow night and Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Tuesday night, Wednesday night, 7 p.m. While the ancient Egyptians literally sought to hoard and bring treasures and slaves into the afterlife, our tradition thought otherwise, explaining, at the moment of our departure from this world, neither silver nor gold nor precious stones accompany us, only learning and good deeds. Assuredly, Eric, with his books of Jewish text and extensive voluntarism, arrives on high amidst much knowledge and much dedication for others. In appreciation of his abiding memory, we rise to conclude our service with this prayer, first recited in English and then in Hebrew. For those who are able, we invite you to rise and we invite forward the pallbearers. Fully compassionate God on high, source of life from whom all things come and to whom all things return, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence to Eric who has entered eternity. Grant him clear and certain rest with you in the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Source of mercy, forever enfold him in the embrace of your wings. Secure his soul in eternity. God, he is yours. May he rest in peace, his remembrance being for blessing. And let us say, Amen.
Rachamim shochen b'amramim, Hamzeh menucha nechona tachat kanfer hashchina, im kirashim tuharim kisohar harakia masirim et nishmat Shlomo Melech ben Berodov v'Sara she'alach le'olamo b'chachamim yastirayhu b'seter kenevav le'olamim v'yitzror ha'chayim et nishmato Adonai hu nachalato ve'anuach bishalom al mishkavo ve'nomor